Hi, this is StrategyCast, where smart marketers and bold business thinkers share the plays behind brand breakthroughs. I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications. What if I told you that right now, as you listen, criminals are siphoning billions from marketing budgets across every industry? Today, we'll uncover the hidden world of ad fraud, a problem bigger than most marketing leaders realize, and explore how clean data can transform not only your ROI, but your brand's credibility. My guest, Rich Kahn, has spent more than 3 decades building companies, fighting fraud, and helping marketers see the truth in their data. We're going to dig into the blind spots that sabotage campaigns, the leadership mindset required to combat them, and the strategies you can put into practice today.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to the show, Rich.
Thanks for having me.
3 decades of, well, probably not 3. Well, it probably could be 3 decades of fighting ad fraud. I mean, like back to the very beginning, right?
I probably spent really focusing on more than 20 plus years, 20, 25 years. So I have more than 3 decades of developing digital marketing businesses and digital assets and stuff like that. I think the internet was given to us or made publicly available September 1st of 1991.
There you
I
go.
built the first company in 93.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on all that. You've been incredibly successful and really a thought leader when it comes to ad fraud. And I don't think enough CEOs and marketers, anyone in marketing, quite frankly, are really thinking through the impact that this can make on every dollar that they spend. So we're going to break that all down to, for all of you today. Paint the picture, Rich. How big is the problem of ad fraud?
Well, let's look at last year. Last year, from best estimates I can see, as a global society, we spent over $700 billion in digital marketing. By our conservative estimates, we estimated somewhere around $140 billion was stolen by ad fraud.
Oh my gosh, that's a huge percentage.
That's like 22%, I think, 23%.
Yeah, I mean, that is massive. I mean, you could never, if you compare digital to other media types, that, the fraud is, it's not even comparable.
Right. And well, yes and no, right? Because the internet is so trackable.
Yeah.
So let's look at TV, right?
Yep.
Let's go back a few years on TV. So TV, you would buy a TV audience and they would tell you, okay, we have, 1 million visitors watching or 1 million subscribers watching this. But how many zip through commercials? How many walk away from their TVs? Like, you really can't count that. It's not like they're faking it, right?
Yeah.
But they're overestimating how many people are being exposed. Or like I used to love using USA Today newspapers. A lot of people may not be familiar with newspapers anymore, but every time you stayed in a hotel, you'd open up your door and right at your foot would be USA Today.
Yeah.
Now, most people who are on vacation take it, toss it inside and go have breakfast.
Yeah.
But they counted that as a reader,
Yeah.
So the
problem has always been there.
Yeah, but it's been different. Like
that's different from someone strategically positioning themselves as taking your money and not delivering what you say you're going to deliver. I mean, the digital marketing is just so infiltrated with that. And I will say, I think the Nielsen's of the world have gone to great lengths to try to monitor more strongly. And there have been some major corrections with TV over the last 8 years regarding what really is an actual number, and quite frankly, some decrease in cost along the way because the audiences just were not as big as they thought they were or as they were reporting they were.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, I think digital is, the big Goliath of advertising approaches today, and that's the area I think where most people should be concerned.
Yes, because there's people that are knowingly stealing the money,
Yeah.
as opposed to just a miscalculation in true audience.
Well, let's face facts, it's criminal activity.
Yeah.
It just is.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the most prominent blind spots that CMOs should be aware of today?
Well, it's literally, if you're paying for advertising, there's a way, and every channel, whether it's search, social, connected TV, programmatic, affiliate marketing, there's a way to get paid. I'll use affiliate marketing because it's probably the easiest example to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, a company decides to set up an affiliate marketing program. They invite people in. They say, hey, I'm going to pay you every time you drive a visitor to my site, or every time you drive somebody who fills out a form or subscribes to a newsletter. I'm going to pay you a certain amount of money for that. And legitimate people start doing that and end up, making some money. And then they realize, wow, there's two schools of thought. One, if it's the actual fraudster, they're like, I can manipulate this using automated software, also known as bots. Mm-hmm. I can build a bot that's going to hit the landing page. It's going to do the action. I get paid. It's going to cost me nothing to do it other than running a computer. And because it's a small little program that runs on a computer, I can run tens of thousands of them at the same time and significantly increase my revenue. And that's stealing.
It is stealing. From the CMO perspective, is it as easy as looking at a bounce rate to understand what percentage of their buy is not accurate?
If they have the right tools.
Yeah.
Because first you have to identify it, right?
Yeah.
So really good fraud, there's two types of fraud, right? And fraud is also known as IVT, invalid traffic. It's a term lots of CMOs are familiar with. And there's two versions of IVT. You have GIVT, which is a general invalid traffic. And then you have SIVT, which is sophisticated invalid traffic. In today's day and age, you're seeing a lot more SIVT, especially with AI on the scenes. It's way more sophisticated attack. So when they attack a campaign, it's not easily seen in your standard data that you get from Google Analytics, from any of your BI tools. I mean, it's not there. It's not seeable because it looks like it's a real person. When they land on the landing page, they spend a good amount of time. They move their mouse around. They do the actions of a real person. So it blends in and it's really hard to see. So you're not going to look at a bounce rate. What you might see is if you look at back-end conversions, let's say, after chargebacks and everything else, you might notice that it's got a much lower conversion or really no conversion at all. And that's what you got to look at. But that's weeks, months out, depending on how long chargebacks come back or depending on when that data comes available. So if you have the right tools, like a fraud solution that will identify fraud in real time, then you'll be able to look at a report and say, okay, I spent, $100,000 last month and 25,000 of it was lost to fraud. And this is where it came from. So now let me optimize my campaign away from the fraud so I don't pay for it.
Is there a more prominent digital approach that sees fraud? I think SEM, I think retargeting, I think display, programmatic can fit it all. But is there one area that you see more fraud than others?
Well, it's by channel. So if we look at channels, right, the one that I see that has the highest percentage of fraud is programmatic.
Yeah.
Averaging around 50% fraud.
Wow.
Search is probably on the lower side. Search and social are probably on the lower side, around 10%.
Okay.
But again, you spend $100,000 a month, $10,000 is still being lost.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's giving you false information, which I think is the real strategic misplay here. Is if you are, as a marketing leader, deploying a communications plan and it's got an omni-channel approach and you really feel confident about the strategies leading into it, and digital is 90% of the ad buy, and 50% of that is ultimately a false narrative. It's providing you insights that could lead you down a totally different path just because of the fraud involved.
Yeah. So we always tell people if you're not using some type of fraud detection tool to identify fraud and pinpoint where it's coming from,
Yeah.
and you're looking at the data, you're making good decisions with bad data, it gives you a bad result.
Yeah.
So you really need in this day and age something to help you identify that fraud.
And you talk a lot about that it's not just a tech issue, but it's a strategic leadership challenge. What do you mean by that?
Well, basically, on the strategic side, you're making decisions based on this data that's coming in, and that's going to make your strategic plan not work
Yeah.
as well as it should.
Yeah.
So again, it's always having, and any CMO knows this, it's always about having the right data at your fingertips to make decisions. Because if you look at the data, data generally tells you what you should be doing.
Yeah.
But if it's tainted or skewed because fraud's involved, then it's going to skew your decision. You're going to make the same decision, but you're going to make it based on bad data.
Well, and let's talk about that for a minute, because there is an example in the market that's used quite a bit surrounding Uber. And Uber lost $100 million because ad networks generated fake app installs via click flooding. And that they discovered this when they cut spend with no drop in actual installs.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, let's break that down. How ultimately does that happen? How can this traffic actually install the app and it ultimately get counted the way that we marketers would count it as a new customer?
Well, fraudsters had the ability to spoof devices, right? That's one of the many techniques that they use to get around fraud. And they can perform almost any action. They can perform, simple click, an app install. They can do credit card purchasing. E-commerce transactions using stolen credit cards. They can fill out forms using real people's information, but bogusly putting it in and creating all kinds of issues there. So installing an app on basically a fictitious device is easy to manipulate. So it looks like, hey, I installed a device, and I don't know the details of the campaign with Uber because there's an article, there's a couple articles out around it, but they didn't go into the specifics, like were they paying by the install or were they managing the pay? Because there's a couple ways that could have gone. Let's say if they were doing programmatic, which you pay by the display, somebody displays it, they're expecting so many impressions to generate an app install. If they don't see that, they shut that channel off, right? Or they shut that source off. So fraudsters know this. So fraudsters know that they have to manipulate that data. Or it might have been as simple as, hey, we're paying people to install our app, and we'll pay $1 every time somebody installs our app, knowing that they're going to make a lot more down the road. And people fraudsters figure this out. They know how to manipulate the data. They manipulate the data. And now this $100 million that was spent on stuff that wasn't real. So when they shut off that marketing, they shut off all the stuff that really, truly didn't convert. While it installed the app, it wasn't a real visitor, so there was no revenue behind that. So when they shut it down, they didn't see anything different other than the natural, organic word of mouth installs that were coming in, or organic installs that were coming in.
Yeah, well, kudos to them for figuring it out, quite frankly. What is the trade desk doing to ensure that the ad opportunities that they're delivering off their network are truly more viable?
Well, here's the thing. And I don't know the total inner workings of Trade Desk. They're a huge company, publicly traded. But most DSPs, they're a DSP. So most DSPs, what we find is that they're using a fraud solution on the pre-bid model, right? So what happens is when a visitor lands on a landing page where an ad unit's going to show, it pings the RTB network. The RTB network pings all the DSPs that are involved in that network. Mm-hmm. Trade Desk is one of them, and says, hey, I've got a visitor on the site. Here's the information I have about the person. Do you want to bid for this position? They say yes. It runs through the system. What most DSPs have done, like the Trade Desk, they'll hire a fraud detection company when that request comes in to look at the IP address and say, is this a good IP address or a bad IP address? The problem with that is it's only looking at general invalid traffic. It's not looking at sophisticated attacks because you're just getting an IP address. There's limited data that you can get from that. You can look at basically data center attacks, known IPs that are used for the sole purpose of fraud, but that's about it. So what that will do is catch about 1 to 3% of the fraud. The trade desk thinks, okay, this is a good ad, and then sells it to the client, goes all the way through, and then they if they win the auction, they sell the impression. However, what they don't do is they do not do, as far as I know, like I said, maybe things have changed in the last couple months, but as far as I know, they don't do any sophisticated invalid traffic detection. And they can't based on how the model is built. So that really, when we have clients on our side that are buying through the trade desk or through any DSP, they use our technology, they're able to embed it in their campaign and see the actual SIBT attack after the fact. So they can use that data to manage the campaign.
Yeah. Is there a certain industry or client, brand size that is impacted more by this? I mean, with Uber, they specifically went after Uber.
Mm-hmm. And why? Uber's got deep pockets.
Exactly.
Like you said, they spent $100 million, right? That's deep pockets. What I find is that fraudsters go after everybody because they go after an aggregate. So they may target a channel, or they may target individual brands, but a lot of times they'll target channels. So we find clients that are really small that are being affected, and nobody's immune. So like I said, when we see 140 billion out of over 700 billion being spent and stolen, it's not a question of if you have a fraud problem. It's a question of how much fraud are you dealing with.
Yeah, I agree.
And that comes down to the channel you buy from.
Yeah. So money is one thing. And by the way, it's a very, very important component of this. But I also believe that brand trust is another big issue here. And can you share with us how fraud impacts brand trust beyond just wasted ad spend?
There's a lot of different ways depending on the channel, but let's pick a large insurance company, right? So a large insurance company, what is their goal? Their goal is to get somebody on the phone to save money on their car insurance, right? Give us 15 minutes, we'll save you money on the car insurance, right? And it doesn't matter. It's across the board. So they build a campaign to drive people to their website to fill out a form that says, I am interested in saving money on my car insurance. And they take that and then they sell it down to the actual agent, the person that's going to pick up the phone and make that phone call. So fraudsters know this, and they know that their campaign is being judged by how many forms get filled out. So let's say they decided to take Lori's information. Your information is easily found on the web. I can get your name, your phone number, your email address, whatever other information I need. Fill that form in, even though you don't know about it, submit it.
Yeah.
Now that gets checked. It says, oh, this is Lori. Yeah, this is her phone number, email. Yeah, this all checks. Within seconds, it's passed to a call center, and the call center is immediately phone calling you, right? Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of things that are going on there, but let's look at brand safety. You get a phone call from a major insurance company saying you just filled out a form on our site. One of the questions in your mind is, wait a second, how did you get my information?
Right.
You do enough calls. I mean, think of like an Allstate or a Progressive or a Geico, how many phone calls they make a month, how many millions of phone calls they make a month. If you have a percentage of those calls going to people that didn't fill out the form, that brand reputation gets affected.
Yeah. It's interesting here. I'd like this light bulb. Many light bulbs have gone off during our conversation today. But if you think about Norton, so many individuals have like a Norton or a system in place that really protects these, or at least lets them know when these sort of things happen, right? Businesses need the same thing. And that's why you're in business, Rich. That's the tool that you're providing, is that safety net to ensure that all these sort of things that really do impact brand trust and perception and, almost acquisition and lifetime value of a customer, all these sort of things really are important. There's nothing more frustrating than being a Progressive commercial client and receiving a phone call from Progressive regarding a form that they say you filled out and you didn't. Progressive needs to take that very, very seriously.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of these companies hire companies like us.
Yeah.
Help them identify that so that they're focusing on their business, which is selling insurance, right? That's their goal, marketing and everything else. And usually we deal with the marketing departments because they're the ones who are tasked with improving the performance of a campaign. And if
Right.
you eliminate the fraud, which is never going to perform, you increase the ROI, you increase the campaign or ROAS, you increase the performance of the campaigns. And so it's important for them to have a tool like us in order to be able to identify that data without having to try to rebuild it themselves. I mean, I've been building this software for the last 20 years. So we've been
Never
collecting.
changing, I'm sure.
Oh my God. We
Yeah.
just had a major
Upgrade.
AI attack this summer.
Wow.
Actually, unbelievable. It actually broke languages in order to get around the software. And
Wow.
it affects everybody. So like I said, when you see this kind of stuff, and we see it because we have hundreds of clients that we're looking at their data. So we get, it's not we're looking at one client's data, we're looking at hundreds of clients' data. So when we see all that in aggregate, we can actually see a clearer picture of what's going on.
Yeah. Let's talk about customer lifetime value for a minute. How does fraud skew that and associated attribution models?
Well, the attribution model would be easier because the lifetime of a client, technically, if it's a fraudulent visitor that's coming through, they never truly sign up for something. Now, if it's, if you're looking at just signing up for a newsletter or something like that, but they never actually pay money that doesn't get charged back. They just don't do that. So I would think in most cases, and I'm sure there's some cases I'm not thinking of right off the top of my head, it doesn't affect the lifetime value of the client. What it will affect is the attribution model,
Mm.
because you may initially get those initial hits that said, hey, Lori signed up for this offer when you didn't. And if I have that attribution attributed to, let's say, the trade desk, well, that's incorrectly done. It's a
Right.
fraudulent, it needs to be pulled from that so you can look at the true attribution model. So that's really what's going on there.
Yeah. And, the change is we're delivering all this information today to make people knowledgeable, marketers knowledgeable about what's happening, so that they can truly make the change needed and, layer in solutions that you provide so that they've got the correct data. Um, can you give us an example of where uncovering the fraud completely changed how the business allocated their marketing dollars?
Lots of examples. I have one, I don't want to mention company name, but when they first came to us, they knew they had a problem.
Mhm.
And they didn't explain how big the problem was, but their company was in jeopardy of being shut down. And when we tested their network, they had over 60% fraud,
My gosh.
which explained why they're spending all this money and they're actually losing money
Yeah.
because the more of the money was going towards fraud than it was going to real people. So for a company like that, they basically came back to us within months of helping them identify where it's coming from, how to mitigate it, how to get rid of it. And they basically told us we transformed their business. I mean,
Yeah.
and you're saving, and this is a company that spends an average of about 10 million a month in digital marketing. So you're talking about some serious dollars.
Yeah. How does this tie into, so this is interesting. We've got people listening today who are implementing integrated marketing, and we're specifically talking about the performance side, the advertising side. How does this issue tie into the larger themes of an integrated strategy?
Well, when you're putting a strategy together, you really want to get all the information. You want to know the back end conversions. You want to know the fraud rates, where they're coming from. You want to know the bounce rates. I mean, CMOs are data hounds. They want as much data as possible. So when they're building this total, game plan of how they're going to grow the company and how they're going to grow the company within a budget, they need all that data. So it's really, you got to have all the data. And
Yeah.
that's just the only way to do it.
Okay, with that said, what are the first 3 questions a marketing leader should ask their team this week about fraud?
So first question is, what are we using to detect fraud? Right? If they don't have a solution, they need to get one.
Yeah.
It's the days are gone when you can do it yourself. I have lots of customers that are very smart and intelligent, but they don't have the dedicated team to just focus 100%. Usually it's like, go to the CTO, let him solve it because he's the smartest guy in the company, let him figure it out. He doesn't have the time to do it. You need a team of people. You need a data lake. You need tons and tons of data points. Like we look at trillions and trillions of visitors to be able to put together our models to make sure that we're accurate in our predictions when we identify fraud. So that's the first question is, what are you doing for fraud?
And do most DSPs provide some detection, especially for those smaller brands that might be out there and won't be able to afford a individualized system?
Yeah, so most systems, if they can afford a DSP, they can afford a solution.
Okay, good.
Solutions aren't that expensive. But the DSPs do provide a GIVT check. So gets rid of the obvious stuff.
Mhm.
They're just the way they're set up. They're not set up to do the SIVT attack data analysis for the client. So that's something that basically the client needs to do on their own. But like I said, I think Trade Desk, each DSP has a different minimum commitment. I think the Trade Desk last I checked was like $100,000 a month in digital marketing spend.
Yeah.
So if they're spending that, they obviously it's a
Hey,
drop in the bucket to have a solution like us to help them identify. But they're
absolutely.
if they're a much smaller company, what you want to do is look at the DSPs and find and ask them the questions. What are you doing about fraud? And where is it? Where does it sit? Is it just the pre-bid solution, which is really just a general invalid traffic solution, or do you have a sophisticated invalid traffic detection system, and how does it work?
Yeah, that's great.
You need
Thank
that
you.
information.
Okay, question number 2.
Question number 2 is, how is all the data being aggregated?
Mm.
Because just because you have access to fraud detection, you have access to bounce rates, you have access to Google Analytics, how are you aggregating that data and analyzing that data?
Mm.
Because I've seen it where people have good tools and one team's over here, another team's over here, another, and no, the teams don't talk to each other.
Yeah,
Data doesn't
exactly.
connect. And you want to know how that data connects.
It's almost like they need, like marketing teams need business continuity training as well. You know what I mean? It's like we are working in silos all too often, and that continuity is what's needed, and could probably collectively isolate these sort of things and find them more quickly.
Yep.
Okay, and finally, question 3.
So depending on all those questions, my third question is, what percentage of our traffic is fraud?
Mm.
Because that isn't, in my opinion, based on the stuff that I've been doing for decades, is an easy place to improve. So like, let's say if you have 10%, well, that you can, 10% fraud, and you can improve your campaign performance minimum by 10%.
Yeah.
You can easily eliminate that without, without killing yourselves, without breaking the bank. So that's the question. That's the other question you want to identify is, assuming that they're using something, what percentage of fraud is coming up on the system? And let's focus on eliminating that this quarter, this year,
Yeah.
whatever.
How quickly can you notice, that fraud is taking place? Is it the minute you turn the campaign on, or is the sophistication level so high that these fraudsters, if you will, are going to wait until a campaign might be a week along or 2 weeks along before they hit?
I see this all the time. Fraudsters will tend, if they see a new campaign light up, they'll tend to, they'll just let the natural traffic flow for a couple weeks, because usually most companies, most agencies, or most managers will look at a campaign over the first week or 2 weeks when they have a new source turn on and identify if it's good or bad. Once they approve it, it almost gets like the checkbox to say, I'm whitelisting the source. And generally speaking, that campaign will get access to bigger budgets and bigger other things. Fraudsters see that, that's when they start to send the fraud. And what they do is they're smart about it. They're increasing little by little to see what happens when it gets shut off. So they know where the sweet spot is, where they can send a bunch of fraud, make money on it, and get paid without getting detected.
Yeah.
So they're very sophisticated.
It's a whole industry of fraud. Fraud creation is a whole industry that I think a lot of people need to be paying more attention to. And quite frankly, Wall Street should be doing a lot more reporting on as well.
I try to talk to them, but it just doesn't, it's one of those things that I hear from clients all the time. I got 10% fraud. It's a cost of doing business. It's
No,
like, no, it's not.
no, it's not. I mean, that's 10 cents on the valuation of your company.
Yeah.
That's a make or break,
And
really.
depending on the size, the bigger the company, the bigger the hit.
Yeah. So let's say that you have 5 minutes in a boardroom tomorrow. What's the one truth about ad fraud and clean data that every CEO needs to hear that his marketing team may not be sharing?
Well, the first thing I would paint the picture is letting them know that it's a $140 billion problem.
Yeah.
So just because you're fill in the blank company name doesn't mean you're not affected by it. So the second thing is, in this day and age, you have to be using a top-notch fraud solution to identify the issues that are going on. You may be able to identify a little bit here and there through some basic tactics and stuff like that, but the more sophisticated stuff, you really need to put some engineering behind, or you need a really good tool that does that, so you can identify and eliminate that. Most companies nowadays, well, I understand most companies, but most companies we come across, like we're at trade shows and we've got a lot of inbound stuff. They're not using anything right now.
Yeah.
So it's not like the average client coming into us is using another solution, not happy. We get those, but it's small. Most people don't even know that we exist.
Well, I think marketers need to look at this as an insurance plan, quite frankly. And the insurance is that your quality score is going to go way, way up with this sort of tool deployed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
It's, you have to have something in place. And because let's face it, we had the company, the example we used before, that did 60% fraud, over 60% fraud. And within a year, we had them under 10%, which is significant. I mean, that's 50 percentage points of their entire volume of advertising got moved from fake to real traffic, which meant the ROI exploded.
Yeah.
But for them, they're like under 10%, and we're blocking in real time, so it helps. That's something that we become that insurance policy. Like, they don't want to ever, the contract was coming up and they were in a rush to get it re-signed because they're like, I don't want to be blind. I need the data.
Yeah. I tell you, a wealth of information today, Rich. Thank you so much. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
With me directly, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find, Rich Kahn. I'm all over the place. If you want more information about fraud, we have the Ultimate Guide to Fraud Detection, which is about an 80-page ebook that you can download for free at anora.io. Anora spelled here. Basically, we put out blogs, probably 2-3 blogs a week. We do podcasts on a regular basis. We're really trying to educate the marketplace on what's going on. But we have a ton of free ebooks online that whatever vertical you're in, you can find something on our site to download and get some more information.
Well, we really appreciate that. And you've done such a beautiful job educating our audience today as well. And my guess is that they're not going to stop learning through this podcast, that they will follow you and find out what they need to know. Rich Kahn, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.